welcome. You're watching Informed Investor, brought to you in association with the National Stock Exchange. I'm Sumaira Abdi. We've traveled to quite a few corporate campuses already. There are a lot more that are still to come. But today, we've come to one in our very neighborhood. We're at the corporate headquarters of Motilal Oswal Financial Services. Let's get started. We have Mr. Ramdeo Agrawal with us. Also, Gaurav Mashruwala is here, who will be handling all the personal finance queries. Before we open the floor to the audience, I have a few questions. Mr. Agrawal, to begin with, we keep saying that the retail investor has been absent for so long, but do you think there's enough reason now for him to return?
There is always a reason for retail people to invest. It's just that the investing culture is becoming so time oriented. People are trying to time the market rather than kind of getting on seriously to the investing. So leave aside very extreme of the market at when the markets are at 30p multiples or 40p multiples, euphoric times. Leave aside that thing. I think worst time is the best time to invest, but even otherwise, bulk of the time is the normal time. So I would think that 80% of the time, 90% of the time, it's good time to invest, and right now is perfect time to invest. Not because the markets have gone up in last 2-3 days. In fact, that should be reason for investors to take a little slow call. But basically, most of the time is good time to invest.
All right. So, we have an audience here who's, pretty much used to investing, Gaurav. So they've got making the money part of it right. Now for someone like this, when they need to manage their money, okay, so equity is a part I'm sure many of them are adept at. What else can they do, especially to manage it better?
So when it comes to personal finance, it's much larger gambit that one should look at. One is goal setting. A lot many times the question that comes is, where do I get maximum return? But it's not about maximization, it's about optimization. Are your investments aligned to your requirement? That's one. Second is contingency funding. Do you have enough emergency money left in case there is job loss for whatever reason, either market condition or economic condition or whatever. Insurance. Is there enough health insurance? What I normally see with salaried individuals is, employer gives it to us, but they've rarely gone to HR departments and show me the kind of cover that I have, limited, unlimited, cashless. So insurance aspects, borrowing. So we see portfolios or a balance sheet where there is loan at 11% and they were FD at 8%. It doesn't make sense. Liquidate that FD and pay it off. So investments is another aspect. Taxation, tax efficiency. Am I kind of making my money work in a manner which is tax efficient? And lastly, estate planning, assets. How my assets will go on to next generation in terms of even simple thing like nomination, and then obviously drafting will, because we are creating assets much faster than what our parents did. So transferring of those assets to next generation is very important. These are all these aspects which are much more focus important, in the sense that it's not only investments. Investments will give you good returns and you should focus on that. But if you've not looked at all those things, those good the assets that you have created may not be of so much use to you when you really need them. So a lot of other things that you should look at.
Yeah, and Motilal Oswal is going to have a very busy HR department now. A whole lot of people, I'm sure, are going to get there. You have a question, sir. Go ahead.
Do you have to stay with the high inflation in going into the future, and what do you think its impact would be on the economy?
See, the point is that inflation is not good for anybody, but it's part of the high growth economy. India is a kind of second fastest growing economy. We have ambition to grow at, even the plan document says about 8.5%. So on 2 trillion base, to grow at 8.5%, obviously it is going to be inflationary. But what level of inflation is good inflation? So planning commission is saying that our target is about 5%. So up to 5%, it's a good inflation. But after that, it becomes a kind of a dangerous thing. It hurts the poorest of poor, and the whole planning process go haywire. So right now we have about 7.5%. So clearly, at some level, inflation is very good, up to 5%. So long as you are getting your 7.5%, 8%, or whatever the desired trajectory of growth. Inflation without growth is nightmare. you know. So right now, hopefully, we have high inflation, moderate growth. What we like to have is moderate inflation and high growth.
Well, clearly the government has a task cut out for them. But let's get our second question in. Go ahead, sir.
How much should one invest towards health insurance, and what are the factors that should be considered before buying one?
Okay, so one is insurance is not an investment, but fine, that's okay. How much is maximum possible, in the sense that if you have an employer cover, then obviously it's not costing you. But if you're going to be on your own, depending on the city that you live in, if you're living in Mumbai or Bangalore or Delhi, we ideally recommend individuals to take health cover of at least 5 lakhs. If they can enhance it to 10, brilliant, because that's the maximum cover that you can get. Smaller cities costs are little less. So based on the city that you live in, the areas, for example, South Mumbai, if you look at the hospitals like Jaslok or Breach Candy or even Central Mumbai, Lilavati, the costs are very, very high. But if you're living in say Ghatkopar or something, the costs may not be that much high. And if there are emergencies, you're likely to go to a hospital which is nearby, unless there are critical illnesses and require specialty hospital. So there is no benchmark as to how much. Try and take maximum possible cover that you can, because treating of illnesses these days is a very, very expensive proposition.
All right, so I hope that answers your question, but let's take a very quick break on that note. We'll be back in just a bit. Do keep watching Informed Investor. Welcome back. You're watching Informed Investor. We're at the headquarters of Motilal Oswal Financial Services in Mumbai. With us, Mr. Ramdeo Agrawal and Gaurav Mashruwala, and a whole host of questions waiting to be answered. So let's get the first one in. Go ahead, sir.
As from an investor point of view, is this the right time to shift from public sector bank to private sector bank, provided the asset quality of the PSU banks and liberalization of the saving rates right now what we are seeing?
If you're looking at very long term, clearly the private sector banks are going to be winners. I mean, if you see the last 10, 12 years, they have taken a huge march over the public sector banks because of their whatever management constraints they have. Public sector has not done as well as private sector banks as far as the asset performance is concerned. But what has happened is recently, public sector banks have been derated big time in terms of valuations. Say like a bank which would be of the size of HDFC Bank would be available to you, I mean balance sheet size of HDFC Bank would be available to you for 5 to 10,000 crores in terms of market cap. Whereas HDFC Bank today would be quoting at 1,40,000 to 1,50,000 crores. So that's the kind of difference you're talking about. I understand that this public sector bank is nowhere close to how good the quality of HDFC Bank is, but the divergence is completely 1/15th or 1/12th, like 7-8% of what is the valuation of public sector bank. So I would think today, if your horizon is say 1 to 2 years, I think you will do better in terms of stock performance in public sector banks. But if your horizon is 10 to 15, 20 years, then you must buy the best of the private sector bank, and there are very few.
All right, so I hope that answers your question. Let's get another question in. Go ahead.
As you know, so these days the corporates are moving towards pensionless salary structure. So then what do you think, what is the best way to secure post-retirement?
Start investing fast, as soon as possible, as simple as that. Because yes, I understand that we are moving from defined benefit to defined contribution system, and hence the entire market risk is shifted onto the individual. Start as early as possible is the only way. There is nothing else that can be as complicated or as simple as this, because there is no solution. Gone are the days when you are sure of how much corpus will come to you and your provident fund and your gratuity and your pension and whatever. No, it's not there. So you take on the market risk, and hence on the flip side, the better part is that you can choose where you want to put in your money. So instead of your money going only into debt-based instruments, now you have option of equity, and at some point of time, and if you're going beyond so-called typical retirement product, you can even put your money into gold. If you have excess amount of money, you can pick up real estate from retirement perspective. So you now have a much larger asset classes available for retirement planning. So you have both pros and cons, but ASAP.
All right, so one more question. Go ahead, sir.
Do you think that Indian IT companies can grow at the rate of 30% EBITDA margin at historical rates? If we compare these Indian IT companies to the global peers, they are growing at a rate of 15%, and they are facing huge competition. Plus, they are facing entry barriers also. So, can Indian IT companies can grow at this rate in future?
At simplest level, if you are saying that global global IT companies can do 15%, Indian companies are doing 30%. The basic gap is that cost of offshore labor. I mean, an engineer in India would cost you about, say, something like say 3 lakhs rupees, which is say $5,000-6,000. But equivalent talent in US or Europe would cost you about $50,000. So that gap will permanently remain. And I don't think that in next 10-15 years is going to bridge, because they are not going to come down from $70-80 per hour to $5, and we are not going to go from $5 to $25 or $30. So I think fundamentally that gap will remain. Whether Indian companies will be marketing wise successful or not, I mean, those are very different issues. But I think the margin gap, if overseas guys, if the developed country IT suppliers, that they are at 15%, we will definitely be at 25 to 30%.
If I can just break down this for the retail investor, for the small guy who's out there, who wouldn't be able to understand so much about the margins that they hold, is there something that you'd want to advise within the IT pack for him to buy right now?
Yeah, see, in IT space there are companies and companies, but there are these three frontline companies, TCS, Infosys and Wipro. These three companies are extremely well managed, they are globally competitive, and they are the flag bearer for Indian IT story. And I think Indian IT story is, say, 12-13 years post Y2K, is 13-14 years old story. And I think next 10-15 years, this IT story is going to play out. As I said, the labor arbitrage is big, competence level is rising. So, and we have scale. So, the guys are coming not only for the lower cost, they are also coming for scale and skills. So, my sense is that these companies will change the business model also. Right now, it's headcount driven. They will go to innovate and become even more innovation-led, product-centric. So I think you have a very good story developing at this juncture, and valuation incidentally is extremely reasonable at about 13-14 times. So I would think that you are getting a high-quality company, growing reasonably okay at 15 to 20%, and you are getting at 12-13 P multiple. So one should hold in the portfolio.
All right, so those are a few ideas or a few thoughts that you can chew on. We need to take a very quick break, but we'll be back in just a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Informed Investor. We're at the headquarters of Motilal Oswal Financial Services in Mumbai. With us, Mr. Ramdev Agarwal and Gaurav Mashruwala, and a lot of questions that are still waiting to be asked. Let's get to them right away. Who'd like to ask the first question?
My question is related to recent hike in FDI limit in retail. So I want to know, will this put pressure on FMCG companies as global retailers will be asking for lower prices?
It's too early to talk anything about what is going to be the impact of recent FDI policy. You know that all the states are not going to be implementing, so few states will start, and then even the state where it is going to be allowed, it's not going to be overnight. I mean, it will take even 10-15 years before they can make even mark, because still out of your 100 rupees in retail, only few percentages are organized right now by the malls and those kind of things. So it will take long time before they become meaningful, and whether they will become successfully meaningful or not, that is also not clear. So just because Walmart is allowed or some Carrefour is allowed, it doesn't mean they will be successful. So you don't have to bother about this particular competitive threat to FMCG companies' margin at this juncture.
All right, let's get into more questions. You have a question.
I want to ask about the conflicts of interest that an advisor faces. Like, how does one figure out if an advisor is working for one's interest or he's working to earn more commission?
One litmus test is how is he earning? Is he earning by selling you a product, or is he earning by charging you fees? So that's one simple thing that you can find out. Also, look at it, what is he doing? I mean, are you looking at an investment advisor or overall personal finance advisor? Because if it's an overall personal finance advisor, then he's not typically looking at only investment. So he could be talking to you about insurance, he could be talking to you about repayment of your debt. I mean, he could be also talking about have you done your nominations properly or not. He could be talking to you about your banking. So if it's a personal finance advisor or financial planner, he's talking much larger gambit and not necessarily products. And if it's only investment, yet you need to figure out how is he earning, because that would be more or less a clear test. If he's earning from you by you paying fees, he's obviously going to be loyal to you. If he's earning by not charging you, but by selling products, then while he may say that he's loyal to you, but he obviously has a conflict of interest.
We have another question there at the back. Go ahead.
Is it important to analyze the dividend track record of a company before investing?
So it's said, hen for the eggs, stocks for the dividends. So stocks are bought mainly for dividends. So dividend track record of any company is extremely important, because at the end of it, after 20 years or 30 or 50 years of existence by a company, they make a lot of profits, they reinvest and everything. But at the end of it, you as a minority shareholder, I mean, if you remain invested right from day one till end, till the death of the company, what you get out during this period of investing is only dividends. So dividend track record of a company is very important. There are very few companies like Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway and all. I mean, they have different objective altogether, but they don't pay dividends. So some of these companies have also in India, some of these companies, they are not paying dividends, and people are hoping that someday it will be bought over by some other company, or they will do some strategic buyback kind of thing, and then they will uncover the what you call value of the company underlying. But main source of most of the companies for you to get rewarded for your successful investing is dividends. So dividend track record of the companies, in fact, whether the company's books of accounts are good or bad, accounting systems are good or not, whether cash flow is real or it is artificial, or how the what is the behavior of the management towards the minority. To assess all this, dividend is the only thing. So you have to focus, you have to understand how is the track record of dividend, how it has grown over a period of time, and markets are extremely sensitive to the dividend payouts, because dividend yield is structural. So dividend yield typically you will find is going to be 1.5% to 2%, whereas the P multiples will be between 5 to 50, whereas dividend yields band will be very, very narrow. So dividend, dividend decides the valuation of the company. It's not a icing on top. It is the foundation of the company's valuation.
I would like to know the composition of the growth stocks or defensive stocks in the portfolio, especially in these kind of markets where from last 5 years it has been in the same range.
In India, where inflation is very high, I personally would think that you are basically buying into growth scenario. So, you know, the issue is that how do you pick up a stock? Whether do you put in two baskets of growth and value? I don't think so. You can buy a set of companies which you think and which you understand is going to have very good future for next 5, 10, 15 years. So it doesn't matter whether it is growing very rapidly, whether it is growing at 8-10%, or whether it is growing at even 5%. What matters is whether you understand the future of this company or not.
And you know, that's a strategy I'm sure that you can also apply across sectors, is that understand the fundamentals of a company before you invest. Time for a few more questions. Anyone else?
This would be with relates to the PF, which I tried to withdraw a couple of years back from my previous company. I mean, it actually took me around, say, 7 months to get my PF amount. So is there any kind of simple way I can get the PF amount back?
So in terms of procedure, it's a standard procedure where you need to apply, and if you've changed the job, the better option for you is actually to transfer that PF to new company. And that's, while it's tedious and long term, but at least you're not losing or anything. Now here, if you want to withdraw, then the procedure is that you apply and you get it. In terms of can you shrink that period, I don't know, in the sense that are there any agents or are there any people who can help you? I'm not aware of that, but otherwise the process remains same.
Thank you.
It's a long and tedious process, and a lot of people here feel your pain. But thank you very much for being here. This is about all the time that we have on our show. Thank you so much, Mr. Agrawal. Thank you so much, Gaurav, for taking the time out and for your interest in investor education. Here's where we need to wrap up then. Do keep sending us your questions and comments, and if you'd like to invite us to your corporate campus, you can also write into us. We'll take your leave now, but we'll see you here next week, and bye-bye.